Absolutely. We are live. Hello, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. And we are going live tonight with Dinale to talk about the Immortal Mask, or perhaps just Immortal Mask. I'll get more on that in a second. I'm going to just share out the link here to Twitter so people know we are ready to go. And that is LIVE exclamation point. And there we are. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad you're all here. I'm going to bring Dinale into the room. Everybody put your hands together for our guest tonight. Dinale, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, RJ, for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk about my new comic book with you guys.
Now, I introduced it two different ways. I said The Immortal Mask and Immortal Mask. It's sort of like Batman or The Batman. So which one is correct here?
Immortal Mask.
No the. Got it.
That. Yeah. It's unique, so no need of the. There's only one.
It doesn't come in 6-packs. You know, I've got the red Immortal Mask here. Anybody want to trade me for the blue one?
Right. No power rings here.
Excellent. So, what do you have in mind here for the comic book that you're doing? I mean, is this a superhero adventure? Is this a fantasy adventure?
Well, it is a superhero adventure, and it's set in 1970s Atlanta, the underbelly of Atlanta. We're following the awakening of this immortal mask, and dealing with what he's going to go through. So I'm excited with that.
I feel like Mike Miller right now.
Yes.
Go back. I have a lock on the door, and he's 12, and he's figured out how to pick it. So I'm raising a thief.
I see. It's going to be he's going to be quite the phantom gentleman.
Yes, he is. He's going to be breaking into houses and stealing things, is the best I can figure.
Yeah.
Okay. No, you're not going to?
No. Okay.
Can I join your podcast?
No, you can't. You don't even know what we're talking about.
We're talking about superheroes from that phone on the phone.
Well, yeah, that's the other guy.
Yes.
Superhero, yeah.
All right. So, Atlanta.
Sorry. Yeah, no problem. He was interested. That's I like that. I like the reaction. He was looking at it.
Well, he's looking at it. He's getting into comics. He gets into my comics when I'm not home. And he's reaching the age where he's less interested in Archie and more interested in Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose. So I've got to, put the heavy boxes on things.
Oh, I see.
But it's just interesting when you said Atlanta, because it's the second superhero comic book I've talked about in the past month that was set in Atlanta. The last one being Southern Nights. We talked about the entire series with author Henry Vogel. So it's I'm curious about why you chose to set it in that town instead of New York City, where superheroes run rampant.
Right. It's because that town, you already kind of mined every story that you could possibly think of in New York City or Chicago or LA. Those are usually the local hotspots that, as you mentioned, when you think of superhero, you're thinking of those metropolis right there. And I thought, well, there's a lot of stories that I found in Atlanta that I thought would make very good superhero stories. And there's very exotic locations in Atlanta that enables me to actually tell those superhero stories, where you're saying, nah, you're making this up. And then you go there to Atlanta and you research it and you find out, no, it's really based on actual, truths there that is found in the city. So I was really excited. I mean, you have the prohibition and the mafia right in the beginning of the 30s. You have the FBI headquarters. You have underground caverns and cities underneath Atlanta. You have the railroad, the underground railroads. You have the Stone Mountains. You have a lot of, uniqueness that people don't really realize that's going on with with Atlanta. So that's why I've chosen that locale because it offers rich opportunity and a kind of different vibe going on compared to your other superhero stories.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places around the country too that are ripe for something like that. Just from, uh, if not even the historical perspective, the urban legend perspective, and the architecture places that are unique. I live in St. Louis, and sometimes I love to just when I'm going downtown, just stop and look up at all the cornices and the gargoyles and the things that you don't see in certain other areas. It's just its own unique architecture, and Atlanta is the same way. Uh,
Absolutely. So, and that's what I was finding out as I was researching, building up the Immortal Mask, the storylines for the Immortal Mask, and figuring out, I want to tell this story, and Atlanta happened to be matching everything that I wanted to tell seamlessly, and that was very important. So I said, you know what? It must be a sign. I have to do this in Atlanta. Gonna do and match the criteria.
and the nice thing about Atlanta, as opposed to other cities, when you start having your superheroes hang around there, is that you always just when you're driving, you always just take a ride on Peachtree
Yes,
because
Patriots.
it's
Yeah,
the only street in town. It's Peachtree Boulevard, Peachtree Lane.
yep. It just cuts through the middle. It's one of the blood for Atlanta, which not a lot of people who aren't from Atlanta uh, would know. So it's you can always tell the right stories and everything around it. There's so much. It's so much I can tell about that street, that one street alone. That is kind of amazing, especially around the time that I'm telling this story. So that's one of the reasons why I chose um, Atlanta and why Peach Tree right there that you mentioned just off the bat does connect to a lot of things that I'm looking forward to telling.
All right. Um, Now, when I hear the title "Immortal Mask," and
Hmm.
the story being about it feels like from the title it's more about the mask than the wearer. The first thing I think of course, is the mask, where a guy put on a mask and then he was taken over by it. So let's differentiate that right off the bat here. How
Right.
Immortal Mask is different from the Jim Carrey The Mask.
Right. It's not anything like the mask where, Jim Carrey's mask, you put on the mask, it's powered by Loki and he does zany murderous spree. Because I've read also the Mask comic book, which the movie was based on, where it's taking the id, of the character and stripping down all the morals, like the inner things. No, this is the Immortal Mask, which is basically uh, ancient mass that's been passed down from one wearer to another to continue their fight against evil. And this mass, enables the wearer to have certain powers that allows them to continue their mission, kind of deal.
One would assume immortality being one of them, but apparently not.
Um, well, that's something you're gonna have to read and find out.
Okay, okay. Well, we've hit the first spoiler wall here.
Hmm.
Can't dig into.
Yeah,
Uh, but you do have a really cool video setup for this, and I want to
yeah,
bring that up here. Uh, oh, well, I meant to add it to the stream. It's already in the stream. I just wasn't
yep,
showing it. So let's give that a full screen treatment here, and if you could just give that a play.
sure. All
There
right,
is no rest for Immortal Mask,
right.
which it's a very tiresome superheroing job.
Well, doing the right thing is always without rest.
Now,
You know.
you can't tell me if he's immortal or not, but I'm going out on a limb and saying invisibility is something that they get a hold of.
Yes, invisibility and manipulation of shadows. So
Okay,
yeah,
because him disappearing there kind of gave that one away. I'm
yeah,
going to go with that.
yeah.
Very cool noir kind of feel to that, which you don't get a lot of in detective or superhero stories these days. It's all kind of, it's either bright shiny colors or gritty. People are too dark. This is just looks like a very nice blend of the right thing, uh, superhero and noir together. Am I reading that right?
Right, right. We're not going ultra grim or ultra colorful, but it's not to say that it doesn't lack any humor. There's always going to be humor for that, and I'm made sure that my stories is full of humor and connecting with the characters like that. So you're not going to have ultra serious kind of guys happening, kind of deal. But there is a kind of swagger with every character that you'll
Yeah.
meet.
Now, does he have? Before I get into that question, I'm going to
Mhm.
back it up a question. Are we meeting the character who's been at it for a while, or are we meeting the next iteration of the character?
You're meeting the next iteration of the character. So what I'll do is just to answer any question is this iteration character of this character is a retired soldier down on his luck who's given a coveted interview with a death row inmate. What he learns from that interview will thrust him into Atlanta's shadowy underworld, and he'll have to utilize his military training to survive from being hunted for the information that could topple the most powerful ruling class in the city. And through that journey, he'll come across the mask.
Okay, so not only does he get the mask, but he inherits the enemies of the mask.
Correct.
It would sound like.
Correct.
Is there an immortal enemy?
You gotta read and find out.
I'm going to hear that a lot. I can tell already.
Yes.
So, where did this idea come from? I mean, before I even get there, just full stop.
Right.
A lot of people are doing the crowdfunding thing right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I always like to find out: were you trying to make the comic book, and then crowdfunding came along as a way to do it, or a lot of people are seeing that people are doing the crowdfunding and making comic book money, and they're like, hey, I can make a comic book. I'm going to start now.
Well, I think those two ideas kind of came converged together into one because I was kind of tired of today's mainstream comics and with DC and Marvel, Dark Horse, IDW, they weren't really telling the stories for me anymore, and I think they have lost the way to craft entertaining stories to more political driven agendas that a lot of that a lot of their stories nowadays are kind of turning comic book fans away. And it kind of felt like, well, I enjoy reading comic book. I enjoy our modern mythology because superheroes are our Hercules, our you know Greek demigods, the heroes that we sing songs and tell stories about. And it
Oh yeah.
felt, yeah, and it felt like now that they're controlled with these corporation, we kind of lost that. So I was thinking, well, if if the company are not listening to me, the consumer and fan, saying, hey, you're not telling the stories that I want to hear, why should I continue being a consumer of your story if you're not giving me what you want? So it kind of made me, not made me, but motivated me to say, well, if there's nobody who's doing what I want, whether you're in the indie comic stream, because there's not a lot of indie comics that are telling the stories that I want, then I'll go ahead and do it myself and tell the comics that would excite me as a child, as a teenager, and as an adult. And I would look into saying, hey, here's the stories that I grew up with. Here's the mythologies that I what inspire me and shaped my things. And these are the stories that I be happy to share to my kids or any other kids or any other people, because I feel that they're in the same vein as as the classics, which is, I'm writing these stories not just, oh, here's Punch Punch, but I'm actually looking, you know studying like the master, like Alex Raymond, Wally Wood,
Oh yeah.
looking at them, looking at how they structure their comics, how they tell their stories. I'm looking at the Neil Adams, I'm looking at the Chris Claremont. I'm looking at the writers and artists of those times, that, what made them work, what resonated in me. And it came back, and it came back again. They focus on the story first, then the characters, and then any political or any um, passion comes from the character, doesn't come from the writer. All of them are consummate professional, that they don't allow their own political views to bleed into the story. And they go with the traditional classic method that's been working for thousands of years. And I said, well, this is the same hero story of Joseph Campbell, that George Lucas used for Star Wars, and I use the same method to develop these stories. So I said, I'm telling those stories that I feel are needed, because right now, the stories that are being told right now, everybody's just turning away. It's like, you turn left and you see one franchise, one character being undermined, destroyed, deconstructed, because they don't know what to do with those characters. And at the end of the day, it's like, I'm having more fun writing about these characters, learning about the process, and developing into this character that I'm so excited. Once I launch the campaign and people are reading it, say, hey, I get what you're saying, kind of deal.
Yeah, it's 20th century mythology. That's what, well, it's 21st century mythology now.
Hmm.
Uh, but I've been collecting. I'm 52 years old. I've been collecting comic books since I was in kindergarten. Um, and I was just digging through books the other day. My high school yearbook, my senior year, they did. I was one of the people did a feature on. They took shots of all the comic books that I had hung up on my wall, tacked through the bags, and just, the header there was, that they said he calls it 20th century mythology, and it is. I mean, they're the same. If you'd written this 3,000 years ago, they'd be gods and demigods. Uh, and to some extent, they still are those same characters. We've just colored them differently and given them different names again. Um, but we've definitely, I don't want to say commercialized them, because, even back in the day, you could buy statues of Hercules and see plays about him. But it's different now. It's
Right. And a lot of these corporations that have taken over custodians of these 20 20th century and 21st century mythology, they don't really care about the characters. They have no idea, no creative. They're just middle management that just happens to be, you know, numb enough to get to the positions that they want it to get to as executives. And they say, is it working? Is it making money? Yes. No. Yes. Keep it. No. Break it apart, sell it, and continue on their merry way.
Yeah, I
And
think if they'd done it the old way, what I mean is, if they'd done things like Hercules and and Theseus and Perseus, the way we're doing superheroes now, we'd get away from diverting rivers and killing minotaurs, and, basically hoist up our sword and say, hey, Andromeda, you take the lead, because, I've been the hero long enough. And by the way, isn't Caesar being a real dick?
right. And then, like, the Romans did it as well. They took all the Greek and made them the Roman gods, and so on and so forth, kind of deal. The golem, we have Frankenstein
Sure.
right there, and, the Jewish golem stories, a lot. Superman. based on what the creator says. It's Moses for all purposes
Absolutely.
repackaged.
That's what the his Jewish creators had in mind. Obviously, uh, you mentioned the Golem. We have a guy who does a radio show. He interviews people of all kinds of different faiths every once in a while, just because he thinks it's interesting, and it is. And he had somebody on who was talking about the Kabbalah, and the guy is normally a show about jackassery and penis jokes and things like that. And you could tell he was just kind of getting worn down by all the numerology and all that stuff. And I actually got through on the call in. I was like, "This is so interesting and stuff," but I'd really like him to tell us about making a golem. And his name's Dave Glover. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, my listeners like to do that kind of thing every once in a while. They like to give me a hard time." And the guy's like, "Oh no, we can do that." And all of a sudden it was like, "What? Why the hell am I sitting here listening to this? I want a golem. Make one now."
Right. Well,
yeah, that's police. They can do it.
Right. And I think the original Frankenstein had the same kind of marker and on top of the golem where, breathe life and it's incomplete. Another aspect of the most recent golem that they introduce that people don't really realize is RoboCop.
Yeah.
RoboCop is a golem, for all lack better of words. You just have a human that's trapped inside a inanimate machine. If you really peel back everything, only the brain survived for Murphy. Everything else is just fake.
And even that was revitalized post-mortem because his memories were dormant in there. They were just kind of popping out every now and then.
Right. And I think if you ever seen the interview that Peter Weller had about operating in the suit, the first conception was he was liquid. He could move smoothly, like the way I would think when he mentioned it. I would think, oh, he's talking about like moving smooth, like the T-1000, but there was no T-1000 at that time.
Right.
But when they brought in this bulky robot suit that they came in, it almost stopped the film from going on, and he was like, they had to call this coordinator, this movement coordinator from Julie Arts, and say, if it wasn't for this guy, the name is blanking out of my mind, that I mean no disrespect, because he saved this movie, and he had a lot of the 80s movies and early 90s. He's very well known, and I can't believe I'm blanking out of my mind right now. But he said, "No, Peter, you can't move liquid. You have to move like a golem with expression." And he shows him this old film where the guy, it was like an old black and white opera, and the guy's like exaggerated with his movements. And he's like, and Peter's not getting it until he got it. And he said, "Oh, I have to, because the suit is so bulky, I got to move with exaggeration." And that in turn informed the character. He has to move it because it's not his body anymore. He has to exaggerate all the movements to make sure. So when you see him moving delivery with exaggeration, that's to show expression. That's to show him trapped in this casing of metal. So it's kind of neat, and it's those thoughts that I also incorporate with the mask. What does the mask do? Inform the characters. How do people react to the mask? And there's internal conflicts and there's external conflicts, and it's thoughts like that I go like late till 3 a.m. thinking about when I'm writing with these characters.
That's when you're onto something, when you can't go to sleep because the story is still writing itself in your head.
Right. Like, for example, I've been developing this for a little bit over a year. I have written like an outline of 10 volumes, 15 highly detailed stories, which it consists of the first volume, and then this massive script that I have to kind of play around with because there's so much story to tell, and I've been having a lot of fun, telling these stories. I mean, it's amazing where I've been going with this, and what's even more amazing is because it's all filtering through my mind and being refined. It all fits together seamlessly. So it's it's amazing, to lack a better word. Uh,
Now, you mentioned also that you're using the Campbellian model for
mhm.
for your character here. By the way, whose name we don't even know yet. We know Immortal Mask. So
Right.
who are we going to meet?
Well, we'll keep that a secret for now. But
Bruce Wayne.
but as we're moving forward, um, as we're starting, I'll be introducing more characters that we get closer to the campaign, and letting those enter the mind. But right now it's just the first introduction. Just get the letting the image, settle in the mind, and get excited about that. The immortal mask is front and center, and the character behind the mask. That's also going to be an interesting part of it as well. Um,
In doing the comic, which I'm
mhm.
assuming that even though you're not marketing yet through a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo because you're getting the brand name recognition out there, I assume you still are drawing and writing it all up. Um, do you know how many pages it's going to be? Do you have you looked into the printing, all the mechanics that go into actually making this happen?
While I was writing the book, I actually, the first thing besides writing the book and getting my team of artists to work on this is actually look at the logistics. And one of the logistic is, I have figured out, line by line exactly what I need to hit to make certain portion of the product be successful. So that's the first thing before anything else. Before I even started writing, was the logistics of everything. So that's well and down to cure. I know the print costs. I know the delivery. I know if I get so many X of backers or X of money, that I'll be able to do certain things. It's being prepared to do a campaign starts even before the campaign start. You can't really go into a campaign and start saying, "Hey, I've made a character, throw me some money," because I've seen in the last 2 years people who rush to do a crowdfunding campaign and realize, oh, it costs more money to deliver, and half of the money that proceed that they got is, you got to worry about the feeds of the platform, either Kickstarter or Indiegogo. You have to worry about Uncle Sam if you're in the United States. You have to worry about the shipping costs. Is it just domestic or international? Because that's going to change it. And if you're doing, what type of shipping are you doing? Are you doing media mail, sending a little board out and hoping that it comes to the backer without a dent or being bent or whatever, or even stolen? I mean, I think there's been situation where, um, in a campaign where the mail got stolen from people,
Oh
and
boy,
people didn't get. So you have to deal with insurance as well. And I've been looking into all that as well, making sure
yeah.
it's properly priced. So it's like everything's, once we're released, the price that you put is it's the price that you're paying for, not just for a awesome quality unique project, but also security, making sure that your products is coming, shipped to you, and there's insurance along with it.
And you got to print over what you actually need by a certain percentage. So something does get stolen or damaged, you can
Correct.
replace that at the cost that it's going to take to mail it out again.
Right.
Uh, so did you talk with a bunch of people who'd already done this to get some estimates, or are you just reinventing the wheel, I guess, by going to printers and figuring it out yourself?
Um, we did. I talked to a lot of people about their experience behind the scenes about it. I've also seen through a lot of YouTube channels and a lot of creators who are very open about their troubles, where they don't realize the fees. But I also have connected to myself with a good resource and mentor who have done this for, for decades, and he knew the ins and outs of everything. So every time I had a question and wasn't sure, I would be able to go to that resource and mentor, and he would be able to say, no, you can't do this, no, look at this, and think about, you know what would happen if, you lost your old shipment, or, it seems cheaper to do this, but at the long run, the quality will be decreased. And if you're looking, and that's something not just for paper, you're looking at paper quality, you're looking at ink quality, because I was telling my mentors, like, I don't want to just offer them a comic book. I want to offer them an experience. I want to, when they go to the page, that's an experience. You're looking at the Immortal Mask. When I talk about the Immortal Mask, when I showcase more images of the Immortal Mask, when they receive their box of the Immortal Mask, I want it to be a Christmas gift, a present. You open it up, the box looks gorgeous, the packaging looks gorgeous. I want you to feel like, I can't really open this; it's too nice. And that's that's the level that I'm trying to do with the Immortal Mask.
Now, people have just heard you say the box is going to be open, and they're probably thinking that you're talking about that Gemini mailer, which nobody's going to keep anyway.
No.
But there's actually more to this than a comic book, isn't there? And why don't you go ahead and let people know exactly what it is they're getting with this project?
Well, I'm also, along with this project, going to be a game board. So it's not just a comic book that you're getting, but you're purchasing a game board. And this game board is a lot of fun because it's going to be modular, and you're able to choose how you want to play the game. Unfortunately, I can't reveal more of the specific, but here's just a little tidbit. But as I get closer to the campaign and launching it, I'll reveal more about the whole mechanics and what you're looking about. But the way I envision the campaign and what you guys are going to look at, you're going to be amazed, and it's going to be completely awesome. And I know I've been repeating awesome throughout this interview, but that's the only way I can express it. It's going to be fantastically awesome.
Now, I know you can't get into the mechanics because you want to keep it a little bit under, close to the vest, so nobody runs out there and tries to copy the whole thing.
Right.
But I would guess that since it's more than just a comic, your price point is going to be probably a little bit higher than what people would expect for your usual comic crowdfunding.
Right. And it would make sense because you're dealing with a board game, and you're also dealing with a comic book, because this comic book, I'm not just satisfied that it's going to be like a floppy. This comic book is going to be like you can put it on your shelf, or you can put it on your coffee table. It would fit either way. It's basically the quality that you see, like the cover, is going to be the interior art. So you can literally put it on the coffee table, and it will look like a piece of art right there.
I think every crowdfunded comic book should have black fluted pages on it. It just is a trademark symbol, but that's just me. I say own it,
Yeah.
But no, you're probably going for something a little bit different here. It's not, if you're going for a coffee table book, are you going for standard floppy size, by which I mean, the height and width dimensions, the 22 pages, or are you looking at more of a prestige binding?
A little bit more prestige binding, maybe hardcover, maybe 48 to 60 pages at first, and depending how the campaign goes, it could be even higher. So it really depends on the demand and what the backers want as we get closer to the launch thing, which is right now we're still in the promotion stage. So it's really getting that, worked out and continue on.
Now, is Immortal Mask one story, self-contained? It's, here's the book, that's the story, and you're done? Or do you see an Immortal Mask issue number 2?
It's a series. So there's going to be issue 2. The story will be concluded because I'm always in the fans. Like, you can tell one good story, but there is an overarching story. So you can read these issues standalone, or you can continue following the journey with me and go into issue 2, issue 3, issue 4. So I'm already written up to 15 issues for the Immortal Mask, and I've already planned out to 10 volumes.
All right. And I would assume then that, subsequent crowdfundings would have a much lower price point. unless, and I'm just throwing this out there,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no idea again of your board game mechanics, but unless with your second issue comes an expansion kit.
Wow, no spoiler.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, but I deeply analyze the comic books that I'm not reading but talking about. I've had people I've talked to on there before. It's like, dude, I had to totally lie to you about this or something because you were like right there in the plot, and this is going to be in the book, and I couldn't talk about it. So sorry if I do that to you, but just
That's
go
okay.
ahead.
That's okay.
Misdirect all you need to.
Yep. I'll be misdirecting and saying mum's the word. Spoilers.
All right. Well, if the interior art is going to be like the exterior art, and by the way, who's doing that? Are you doing the art too?
No, I'm just a writer, but I have all of my artists under a non-disclosure agreement, so they can focus just doing the work and the art and not being bothered by anybody else.
Cool. Well, the art on the outside, if this is cover art we're seeing here, then we're definitely in for a treat when we see the interior art.
Right.
And again, this is something I also talk to all the time when I talk with people crowdfunding, is that artists, you want to crowdfund it so that you have the money to make your comic book, but especially if you're doing Kickstarter now, Kickstarter, if it doesn't meet goal, it doesn't happen. So all that money doesn't come in. And people think, okay, well, the project doesn't happen. The thing is, they don't realize you as the writer, you have probably already paid these artists. So you start out in the hole when you're crowdfunding something.
Correct.
They like to be paid up front unless, they are the creator and, then they're just doing it on their own and trying to sell it, or they're part of the creative team.
Right. So
I would assume that's where you're at here.
Right. And that's the case. I think another creator said it easily. You may be paying a premium, but I paid a fortune to get this book out, kind of deal. So,
yeah, and especially if you're only going to print 500 copies. That's a print run that that's very small for a big print house, and it's definitely small for competing with everything that's on the shelves in the stores. But is the store a place where you're trying to maybe land this once it's been kickstarted? Because comic stores are almost by default these days also game stores.
Right. So that's also something that we discussed about. We are still talking about it. I can't say more than that right now, but I'm focused right now with the crowdfunding first.
It's been 38 minutes of him saying nothing, folks. This is what we've got. We've got a book and a game. That's all we've learned in 38 minutes. But you're going to want it because it looks cool. Okay.
Right.
What's your time frame on launch? I mean, are you close, or is it still? I know you're trying to get the name recognition out there, and I don't know how long you've been, with the website up and hitting that out. But sooner or later, you got to get off the pot and pull the trigger, right?
Right. So right now we're doing the promotion stage where we're looking at some milestones to see whether we're ready to launch or not. Once we hit those milestones, then we'll move forward with announcing the launch of the campaign, because I don't want to disappoint the backers who jump in and pull the trigger on me and the campaign doesn't succeed. I want them to succeed and feel confidence that, okay, I back this is going to succeed, this is awesome, there's no way this campaign is going to fail. And the moment you hear me say we're ready to launch is the moment this campaign is going to succeed.
Perfect. Yeah, last thing anybody wants is to throw money into something that they don't even see anything out of for at least a year. And I've backed campaigns like that. I think a lot of the initial campaigns were that way because everybody was learning it. They were like, I know how to make comics. I know how to print. I've never done it on my own before. But here's what I can do. And people said, yeah, I want one of your original comics. And a year later, it's like, we're still doing it, but we're moving slowly. Or in worst case scenarios, it's like, well, you've got, people who've had Kickstarters for going on 6 years now that haven't delivered anything with no
Right.
updates. And you've more recently had Indiegogos or Kickstarters that, well, no, it was an Indiegogo and it just collapsed and there was no refund. The money was gone and there was no product, which it is just a nightmare scenario for everybody else in crowdfunding, because now there's precedent for something like that happening.
Right, and that lowers the trust for that. And I've been aware of that. So that's the unfortunate side effect. So no, the moment I launch, it won't take a year. The production way that we're doing this is completely different from how everybody is doing, because they're doing everything at once. Our production is layered. So that means that everything will go faster than what is typically done on other crowdfunded comic books. So you won't be expecting to wait a year for such a product.
Now, I know that, the more recent ones now, it's like when the crowdfunding starts, it's going to last a month. And at the end of the month, we're shipping. So I think lessons have been learned, and people are figuring out how to get their project firing on all cylinders right out the gate, and launching at the right time rather than, on a whim and a thought that then they have to deliver on later.
Right.
So it's an evolution.
Yeah, it's an evolution. It's a learning pain, growing pain. We are, for the lack of better word, we're returning back to how comic books started before the direct market. Because if you really think about it, the original companies, this is how they did it. They kind of, crowdfunding is really a nice way of saying pre-ordering the book.
Yeah.
And the method of distribution and awareness is just a platform. Back then they're calling, the stores and newsstands and saying, hey, are you interested in buying our books, and putting on your newsstands kind of deal. So in this way, we're kind of doing the same thing. Instead of asking the newsstands and, Target or Walmart, we're asking the backers themselves, hey, does this book really interest you? And, I'm trying to hit it a home run and say, I want you to look at my book and say, there's no way I'm not interested. Kind of deal.
Let's take another look at that picture. Now, this, of course, from my perspective here, doing this through Streamlabs right now, this appears to be almost a photograph that he's painted on top of. Is that a photograph, or you just got some hyper realistic artists working here?
Hyper realistic artists.
I love it.
So everything is, layered.
It looks beautiful. The only ever thing I've had against the hyper realistic art, where it looks sort of like a photograph, is that when it comes to action scenes, they almost always look like they're posed. They don't look like they're moving like a traditional comic book does. But there have been exceptions to that. Alex Ross pulls it off nicely, I think. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that's always been something I watch for, because you can tell when somebody's holding a punch rather than swinging that punch.
Right, and that's why a lot of that really is in the layout work when they're doing the penciling, because that really is really the backbone. So before we even do anything else, start layering it, it's really the most of the work and most of the correction is done in that level of the production.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, holy cow! There's reflections coming off that puddle of water behind him, and off the fender of that car. The light sources. This is some really beautiful stuff, and I'm hoping it's at a price point that I can afford to get into, because I'm going to want to get a copy of this one.
Absolutely. So we do look at that, and we try to make it as reasonable as possible, but paying all the expenses as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, making sure.
Well, if you crowdfunded like the direct market, then you'd say, hey, are you interested in buying one of these? And somebody say, yeah, I'll buy one, and then you ship them 6.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to be Marvel or Black Diamond on that. No, I don't subvert expectations in that regards. I would rather give what the customer paid for, and any additional things is on me for our thank you kind of deal.
Yeah, well, especially if you start hitting stretch goals,
Hmm.
which I know a lot of people. I I don't quite get stretch goals because I don't do this. I just talk to y'all. But yeah, if you say, "Hey, we've hit 10,000, so now your board game is going to come with a, gold foil special powered card that can grant you immortality for your character for the next 3 turns or something." I'm making stuff up. I have no idea if there's even cards in this game. I don't even know if there's dice in this game. So it's just a game.
It's a game.
It's a game, and
Let's-
you're gonna play it. Is it a 2-player game or is it a 4-player game?
It's a one to many player games.
Oh, wait a second. So there's a solitaire version of it. We've got a spoiler out there now.
Yep.
Okay, you can play solitaire version of the game. Nice, good to know. If you are interested in learning more about Immortal Mask, we do have the link to the website in the description below. And I'm sure if you go bookmark that page and visit it frequently, whenever there is an Indiegogo and or Kickstarter launched, that page will change and let you know. We encourage you to go to Dinale's page and follow that. And if you're reading that description, read further down. If you'd like to, if you like this kind of content, we obviously encourage you to hit that subscribe button and come back. We are trying to grow our subscriber base. But if you just want to help the site out, please click the link to criticalblast.com and just visit our website, see our reviews and our interviews and our opinion pieces and the news pieces. Doesn't cost you a thing to do that. Helps us out a little bit with that ad revenue. And if you are the kind of person who does like merchandise, criticalblast.com is also a publishing arm. And our first young adult hardcover novel, hear that? That's hardcover. Hardcover superhero novel is available on Amazon at that link. That's Bulletproof Origins by Stephen J. Mitchell. It features young Cody Haywood, who finds out on his 16th birthday that he is impervious to all harm. And deciding that he has the powers of a superhero, he's going to go out and be one. Cody also has the attention span of a ferret on pixie sticks, so the focus problem is going to be a bit of an issue for him, especially when terrorists come after him to find out what makes him something they would like to be. Dinale, it's been a pleasure having you here tonight, and I can't see anything but good stuff coming. I don't see how this can fail unless you come out and it's $150 buy-in point, which I imagine it's not going to be that. But the artwork is phenomenal, and if you can start providing evidence of the product evolution as you get ready to kick off, this is going to fly.
And if you want that, you can always go to denales.com. The page will redirect you to the Immortal Mask, and underneath is you can submit your email, and you'll be included into the newsletter. So I'll be updating everybody who's in the newsletter first with the exclusive updates of all the new images, any promotional, any discounts, on any exclusive products for the board game. And anything else Immortal Mask related. So, check the newsletter out. It's simple. You just go to the website, type in your email, and hit submit, and you're part of the newsletter.
Fantastic. It's the Immortal Mask, it's Immortal Mask, ladies and gentlemen. It's a comic book. It's a board game. It's a series. It's everything that makes going to the comic shop and being a fan cool. So definitely pick that up. Dinale, thank you for being here, and we're going to have you back on as you hit your launch date so we can help push that goal and get it hit.
All right. Well, thank you so much, RJ. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for, letting me talk about a little bit about the Immortal Mask.
What little we could learn.
Right.
We tried to pry some secrets out of you like a dentist with the pliers, but you held fast, man.
Yes. So I'm very excited, and I'm excited to be releasing those tidbits as we hit those milestones.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. And if you missed the first half of it, definitely go back to the channel and catch replay. We'll tweet that out post haste. Good night, everybody.
Night.